Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Ronan Nazarene Talk. I'm one of your hosts, Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films.
And I'm Nazarene Prod. That's it.
And today we're just going to have a general discussion about television, the opium of the masses, the idiot box, the thing that dominates our life, or used to dominate our life. Now the projector dominates our life, I think. That sits in the corner. And just have a chat about the shows before binge watching in the days where you actually had to wait a week for the next episode as opposed to less than 30 seconds. And just a general broad discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing with this one is it takes no research, which is a good thing because we've been doing ones where we actually had to research them, and this one we're going by our memories. Which will probably prove to be completely wrong. And when we talk about it, we'll be like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. And we'll be like, oh, what? Did I dream it? Like, for years, I thought I dreamt the show Monkey. Because it was so weird. Yeah, it's so weird. I saw it as a kid. So it must have just been released. And it wasn't available for a long time. And I was like, did I dream that or what? And then you found out, no, it actually was real.
Yes.
You didn't dream someone flying the cloud. No, it was real.
One day they'll invent that method of transport, hopefully.
I can't wait. That's one thing I want to do.
And also the water margins of Yangshan Po, which were on around about the same time. That was the more serious one.
All right. So no flying clouds in that one?
No, that was more grounded and historical fact. Not really, but...
All right. So it's a bit more highbrow than Champion the Wonder Horse then, what you're saying?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, so I interrupted you there. What were you saying?
Not exactly sure. But it is interesting again because it's a whole generation of people who don't have to wait a week for the next show. Whereas certain shows that we loved, like Homicide, Life in the Streets, for example, you'd wait a week, but then it wouldn't be on in the same day. They'd move around the time slot.
Yeah.
So you'd actually almost have to go on an expedition to try and find the next episode.
Yeah. Plus, it would sometimes be on at 10 at night, then something would be on at 12. And it's like, and then back at 10, it's like, are they trying to make people tortured?
Yeah.
I remember Charlie Bruckner had a thing on The Guardian at the time, and he did a little column, and he was a big Homicide fan at the time, and it was almost like reading his column just to have someone else in the Homicide watch try to say, okay, it was on this time, at this point, this time, and he was continuing updating it. It was one show he was not sarky about at all.
Yeah, because trying to set your recordings on your video recorder was murder because it was just be like different days, different times. It's almost as if they didn't want you to see it.
I know. It was almost like it showed up the rest of their output as bad. Let's import a good show from America.
Yeah. It certainly showed up NYPD Blue.
Oh, yeah. I never got that show at all.
Yeah, I never got into it.
Yeah. So, so what was the shows that you were really into as a kid? Like, what was the one that influenced that you just were into as a kid? I think you can talk about TV, but I think what you watch as a kid is important, even though sometimes it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it kind of started with cartoons, and obviously Looney Tunes.
Yes.
And Tom and Jerry were very inspirational as far as their attitude towards violence.
How the world really works.
Saying violence is fun and the laws of physics. The Roadrunner and Coyote and the laws of physics. And then obviously you kind of grew up a bit more. But there was stuff that I wasn't allowed to watch as a child, like Grange Hill. That was banned in the house. Yeah, because it was too subversive.
Really?
Yeah. So I wasn't allowed to watch Grange Hill. I had to.
I was probably helped. It wasn't that good.
Yeah, not as if I want to watch Creature. I haven't went back and bought all the series or anything.
No, it was,
And then also the first show that was kind of dangerous and edgy was obviously Miami Vice, which had a big. You had to stay up late to watch that one when you were at school.
yeah, I watched that one as well. That was a kind of big one for me. I mean, I do remember things I saw as a kid that went to context and more as you get older and you go back and see them again. Like I watched Doctor Who a lot as a kid, like the second half of Tom Baker years. Then I look back at them years later, watched them, looking buy them in DVD and things. It's like I know where I started and I filled in a lot of gaps of things as well. And it was kind of weird because I went through the Tom Baker stuff all the way to Peter Davison to Colin Baker. And then we got to Sylvester McCoy, I kind of went.
Yes. Yeah, I stopped after Sylvester McCoy. Well, the show stopped after Sylvester McCoy and never kind of picked it back up when it rebooted, really.
Yeah. It's kind of the kind of irony is I found out that I actually started watching just as what would become my favorite year of the show ended. So I just missed it and no more. Yeah. And then it was like, I started the era of K9 and things. So and I remember watching that. And Doctor Who scared me as a kid. It wasn't like hide behind the couch, but there was something threatening about some of the monsters because you use your imagination as a kid in a way that they weren't in the monsters themselves. Just
the two that I really remember was Julian Glover in Paris.
Oh yeah,
who takes his face off.
Yep.
And the one where I don't know who it was, but it was in a space station, and I think it might have been the Master or somebody who was turning people into little voodoo dolls.
Yeah,
that was creepy.
I know because Master always did that even from the early 70s. It was always a joke.
That's the two that really stick out to me.
I remember one where the TARDIS blew up and it was spread out all over this location, there's caves, and they had to try and bring it back together again. And then I saw it later and it was like, it didn't look half as impressive as my mind had set it up as.
Yeah.
It was like, I wish I hadn't rewatched this one because the thing that was in my head was so much more impressive than what was there.
Yeah, because I never really got the terror of the Daleks, to be honest. I was never really that scared of the Daleks.
No, it was the smaller monsters that got me more than the... I liked those other monsters, but they weren't scary.
It was more the creepy stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than the armies of Cybermen or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is one of the things when Doctor Who came back is then they realised the kid liked the weird monsters and they kept bringing them back, so...
Yeah, the living statues one, I think. Was
when
it started again.
Yeah, I mean, until recently, some of the recent ones have seemed to go against that, and it's like, come on, you've got to scare the kids. That's the kids want you to scare them. Yeah. That's why they're watching it. Scare kids.
And Peter Capaldi not swearing was disappointing to me because I was a big fan of the thick of it.
Yeah, no, at least of this thing, called "Let's Scare the Little Buggers" was the motto of the Doctor Who in the 70s, and we were the little buggers were trying to scare, and they succeeded, and it was great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously did go back and watch the John Pertwee stuff and the Patrick Troughton stuff, which is really good as well.
Yeah, but I also remember something I saw as a teenager, but I must have seen it as a kid as well, and repeats as Quatermass because it kind of stuck in my head somewhere. Yeah. So I think I must have seen repeats of them somewhere, but as I grew up and watched them more, it was like, this stuff's amazing. This stuff's really good.
Yeah, there was lots of stuff on BBC Two at like 6 at night.
Yeah,
they would show White Monkey and the Water Margins, and they would show repeats.
And Battlestar Galactica, the original.
Yeah, that was always on 6 o'clock.
And Buck Rogers was also on and stuff like that. But I was always a Battlestar fan, ultimately, even though looking back on them, they weren't that great. I still have a real nostalgia for those ones. It's like I still have them in Blu-ray. I'm nostalgic to that. But
again, the one that sticks out to me is the one with Ray Milland, I think, and then they go to this planet where they're getting everything, but they're actually being kept as food.
Yeah,
and there's like
that's a larvae.
Yeah, that was the one that really stuck in my mind, as like being against the creepy stuff rather than the.
Yeah. They didn't really go into creepy for Battlestar Galactica. It was more of a sci-fi thing than creepy. It should have gone more creepy, but it never.
Yeah,
I also remember what the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
I still enjoy them because they seem to have inventive stories. I remember I had to go to church, and I used to always like wait. The thing that got me through church was knowing when I'm back home I could go and watch Star Trek.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, the original series, despite its flaws, is still my favourite because it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like Star Trek ended up taking itself way too seriously.
I know. And the original didn't, but also better stories and more
Yeah.
interesting situations and setups, and better characters ultimately as
Yeah.
well.
Because it was really obviously fresh ground, they did have really interesting stories that obviously have been done and overdone so many times in so many shows since, but they were
Yeah.
fresh at that time.
Yeah. We just had a background. I should point out anyone who's watching this, it's so warm that bang with the windows open because it's too warm, otherwise it would collapse halfway through.
Yeah, that's a very loud motorbike that lives around here.
Yep. Yeah. So I also remember as a kid, the kind of grown-up show I could kind of watch was Spitting Image.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
Yes, I did have the chicken song on 7-inch single.
Yep. It was kind of like the it was a thing that was for adults, but it's a thing the kids watched and talked about in school later as well. Even though you didn't get some of the references.
Yes.
It was still quite funny to see everyone in the public eye treated as grotesque and as these horrible Muppets that just these puppets that just were horrific.
Which is completely unlike the truth.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it was almost
They're
a
not
bit
horrible and grotesque at all.
Yeah, it's a bit of reality ultimately, and even though ultimately maybe they weren't as satirical as you thought they were at the time, it was still quite good to see that kind of lack of respect for the people in power, and because they did stuff like "Have you seen a president's brain?" about Reagan, and things like that. They were just in no respect. So,
I mean, I think. Well, I was just going to say, I think you do remember it being a lot edgier than it actually was, but at that time it was still new and you hadn't seen anything like it really.
Yeah, because this was Britain. Like, Britain's always had a thing about satire. Like, they're a bit scared of it, but they also like it. It's like a weird kind of push-pull thing. But I think just the presence of it was good in the 80s, because the 80s was kind of depressing time. Yeah. Really. Where we got a lot of imports from America at that time. Really, like, there's a lot of trash shows that we got in America, like the A-Team, Airwolf, Knight Rider.
Yes.
And now try watching those shows as a grown-up.
They don't age well.
Yeah. It's basically
the A-Team, which will give you an unrealistic view of violence where people can fire Kalashnikovs at each other and nobody gets wounded. It's quite nice.
I know.
They'd all have stormtrooper aim.
I know. And Knight Rider, which is the same plot week in, week out, and David Hasselhoff being outacted by a car.
Yes. Street Hawk.
Yep.
Which was essentially the motorbike Knight Rider.
Yep. Airwolf, which is basically the Knight Rider with a helicopter.
Yeah, because Blue Thunder was first, and then they made.
Yeah, Airwolf actually lasted. The funny thing was, Airwolf was actually darker because it had a bit more. At least to start with, it was a bit darker, and then it kind of got more funnier and sillier as it went along. Yeah. There was also what was a Tron rip-off, the Tron Cop one? Automan.
Don't remember that one.
All right. They would go. It would be like a computer simulation, and there was Manimal.
Oh yeah, Manimal with Simon McCorkindale.
Yeah.
Don't remember anything about it apart.
I know, but just remember it existing. There's just all these weird things. It's like the existence of a lot of these shows tells you that Hollywood was on cocaine a lot in the 80s because some of this stuff made no sense. And we were such stupid kids. We'd watch and go, wow. And then it was
you had the British grounded version of that with Equalizer or Edward Woodward.
Yeah, which no one watched.
No, every episode he would shoot somebody at the end and then he would go, nobody had to die. And it's like, well, you're the one that shot them.
Yeah, but it's an American show with Edward Woodward. But yeah, it was weird. It was like, there's also a lot of trashy shows when my parents were watching, were forced to watch some, like Ain't Not Half Hot Mom and Heidi High and stuff. And you're thinking, why do I remember this stuff? I hated it.
Yeah, Heidi High is not good.
No, it's like a cultural thing that you're forced to sit through. Because that was the thing, we had to sit and watch what your parents liked, because you didn't have all these TV channels, and because TVs cost a lot of money at the time, and eventually make it portable. Like, I had a black and white portable for years.
Yeah, I had the black and white, so it's not television, but obviously the first time I saw 2001 was in black and white. First time I saw Good, the Bad and Ugly, it was in black and white. First time I saw The Thing was in black and white. Even the first time I saw Citizen Kane, it was in black and white.
I know, it's terrible.
Terrible.
But that's the thing, and one of the reasons why we're buying TV is the amount of films you saw on TV that actually were going to influence you. I mean, we'll get to Movie Drome pretty soon, but I want to get there, but I thought we still can talk about the kind of things you'd watch. Because, I mean, I think at that point, the other big shows I did watch at the time, like the mid-80s, were V and Robin Sherwood.
Yeah. I didn't watch Robin and Sherwood that much, but certainly V.
Yeah. Like Robin Sherwood actually was darker. That was pretty dark because the things that you remembered from it, it was pretty dark because there was a Robin Hood story where Robin Hood get killed halfway through. And I had a replacement Robin Hood. And there was also, there was a lot of weird monsters and dark monsters and Satanism and paganism. And I remember really liking that because it felt like it was a bit more grown up, and it was pointed towards the kind of shows I'd actually, the kind of films I'd watch, which is darker. And so it was a sign when I was about 10 or 12 what my future of watching would be, because this was a lot, even though it was a TV show and an action adventure, it was darker. It was really darker. And V was about fascism.
Yeah.
Which was quite dark for a young lad to watch.
Yes. I mean, back to the 8.5 Hot Mums and all of that, but obviously you got the good ones like Porridge and Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister.
Yep.
Which were just awesome and still are.
Yeah, no, those things were amazing. It was just a weird mix of like some like, I mean, the worst one was that French Resistance one, like Allo Allo.
Yeah, Allo Allo. Yeah,
it was so tasteless.
Awful.
And there's just all sorts of really bad ones.
Being Served and Ben Hill, and
it's always amazing when you see that. You think this is the same place that actually produced something like Monty Python or 40 Towers.
Yeah.
You know,
40 Towers, the lesson in stopping when you need to stop.
Yeah, because 40 Towers, I mean, I was never that a massive 40 Towers fan, but I can appreciate how well done it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it's not like a show that I'm a massive fan of, but I think it's a show you can really appreciate the craftsmanship of it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm much more of a Monty Python fan than 40 Towers fan.
Yeah. You can still probably remember every plot from 40 Towers episodes.
Yeah, because it's so well done. It was so well crafted. It's like the same with Yes Minister. The Yes Minister plots were really good, and a lot of them are
sadly still relevant.
What?
Sadly still relevant.
Yeah, because it's just about politics and about how hypocritical they are, and how unreasonable politicians can be, and how reasonable civil servants are, and how everyone messes each other up and screws each other over.
Yeah. And you press the button.
Yeah. And I remember one about them trying to work out about the who's going to be the Transport Supremo, and everyone's trying to get rid of this horrible job because it was the ultimate way to lose face politically, which is why nothing ever gets done. It was a great metaphor for why does nothing ever get done, because no one wants to make the difficult decision and look bad.
And one of the best ones where they find out Sir Humphrey made a mistake like 30 years ago.
I know.
That cost them millions. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, there's little things like that you would never... And the idea of them getting drunk and going to the Arab nations.
Yeah, the embassy.
Yeah.
The code they use is fantastic.
And they're getting hammered. There's just so many good things. That's the thing. If you talk about the 80s, there's so much trash there, such American trash like Dallas and Fulton Crest and stuff. Yeah. And there was such good stuff at the same time. And it was like, that's a weird mix of... It's the same way you get it every era, you get good stuff and bad stuff. It seemed to be like an extreme kind of...
Plus, kids have to remember there was only 3 channels.
Oh,
so it's like
4. ultimately.
Well, before Channel 4, there was
Channel
only
4 came in
three.
the mid-80s. It was a
Yeah, but
massive thing.
before Channel 4, there
We
was
get
only three. So
yeah, I know, but we got
the
a
stuff
fourth
that you
channel.
ended up, yeah,
It was
the
so
stuff,
important. We got a fourth channel.
the stuff that you remember watching because there was nothing else, like the Russ Abbott show. I mean,
Yeah,
who
actually,
in the right mind?
I was too good for that. Actually,
Yeah,
after
who
a
would
few of
watch
those, I was
that
like,
now? Nobody.
yeah. I remember watching stuff like Max Headroom, which is
Yeah.
weird. And it was so cynical as well, and I'm pretty sure it's not very good, but that thing is like, it was still interesting to watch, because you'd watch anything. Because you were a
Yeah.
kid, you'd be like, that looks fairly dark when we watch it, and it's like, you'd, like, just set your recorder up. Like, I had so many blank tape record stuff, just to try and see anything weird. Because all the good stuff was on about after 10 when you go to bed.
Yeah.
So I remember
But
my dad
also
was like,
remember,
don't pull the plug out, leave the plug in, I'm recording.
but also remember at some point programming actually started after midnight.
I know.
Because for a lot of years it just stopped. But then they actually did stuff during the night. Of course, it was all rubbish, but I mean, you still wanted to watch it just because it was keeping going. So.
You get something like really serious, and that would start about, because it was a bit scary. It would start about like 10:30, and then it would go on to sometimes it would start at 12 midnight or something. And you'd get a lot of weird shows about movies and stuff. Like I remember there was one called Cinema Attractions. You get the trailers.
Yeah.
That was like on the 2 in the morning or something. But there's one
there
place
are,
you get trailers.
Yeah, there was like weird concepts like no binge watching, programs not on all during the night, actually having to press buttons to change channels in televisions, not remote controls, having to turn knobs.
Yeah, I know. There's also the thing that there's this one over the night. There was this European music video show that was on for an hour or two, and you get all the really weird European pop music, and some of it was very strange. And you just watch it just for like, wow, that's what they think's good. It's just as bad as ours.
Yeah. So there's like weird things that we had to endure that nowadays seem really strange.
Yeah, pretty much is like you just going on YouTube and finding weird stuff. But if we had to record it all and put an effort into it to find some gems amongst all the muck.
Yes.
So that was always fun to do. But
also, one of the lasting memories of those times was the adventure game, which obviously you can watch the episodes on YouTube now, and it does seem like the most bizarre quiz in the world, but we all remember the vortex.
What?
The vortex at the end.
I never watched that as a thing.
Never watched the adventure game. Oh, seminal.
All
Hasn't
right.
aged very well, but it's seminal. Celebrities trying to do puzzles in this bizarre.
Oh, I remember it now. It was just
space system.
Oh yeah.
Which was obviously just a studio in the BBC, but
yeah.
In those days, it seemed like a completely different galaxy.
Yeah, I know, because you see some recordings of old interviews of different people from different old shows. It's like, wow, that was really sad looking. I used to think that was epic.
The Great Egg Race was another one with Heinz Wolf.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, the stuff you see in TV. So we had like the 70s and 80s when we were both pretty young, and we're probably some of the stuff we're watching we probably shouldn't have been watching, but we watched it anyway, even though you couldn't get Grange Hill, which is weird. Because you watched V, but you didn't have Grange Hill. It's like,
no,
V was actually much more grown up than Grange Hill.
Yes.
Or it started that way.
Yeah.
Before it degraded into something weird. But yeah, but in like towards my teenage years, we had stuff like Miami Vice and Crime Story and things like that, which were much darker. I mean, I remember Miami Vice feeling really dark. You actually watch them now, and they actually do sort of a darkness to them. They are moodier, and because there's Michael Mann involved in them. Because I remember specifically when the police captain get killed in episode 8 or 9 because of changing the actor. I remember it being really dark because I did not expect that to happen. Suddenly, a character you've been following just gets killed, and that's it.
Yeah. They just didn't do that in those days. Obviously, they do it now because it's kind of a cliche, but they didn't kind of do it in those days.
Yeah. Well, normally, if a character left the show, they would just be written off and they'd be moved precinct or something. No, they just killed them. Like, brutally. It's like, you're not coming back, and we're going to make some hay out of this. And So yeah, that was. I remember Miami Vice has been really interesting and dark and weird. It's all about drugs, and which as a kid you're starting to understand the idea of the drug war, and suddenly
Yeah,
but it
'cause that
wasn't like
wasn't.
the A-Team or anything where it was just silly. It was just actually it was much more like the drug war was brutal.
Yeah, because drugs hadn't really come up that often before, and certainly not kind of the focus of a show almost.
Yeah. It
The
was
whole
also
cocaine thing in the 80s just kind of
yeah.
obviously blew that up.
And plus, there's also a show that were not always you guys didn't always win. Like sometimes there was compromises made. It just kind of gave you a feeling of that things were more complicated because we're taking stuff from the headlines, we're taking stuff from researching. Because Michael Mann's in charge of it, and obviously he was into a lot of things, and they all kind of come out in Miami Vice.
Yeah, he had a lot of cop friends and people in law enforcement that he knew. So
yeah, and which of course led him on to Crime Story, which I did not see till much later, but it was made this time. And it is just an astonishing show. It's one of, I would say, probably the first show we're bringing up. It's a genuinely great show, like all the way through. Like especially the first season. The first season is. I mean, where else do you actually have a character getting nuked at the end? Your villain getting nuked.
Yes, it's literally got an explosive ending.
Yeah, and it's basically based on the the character from Casino, the Joe Pesci one. Like the villain in this show is based on the same character as Joe Pesci, but Scorsese did not nuke him.
No,
which was a problem in Casino.
Yes,
we can both agree. There was a nuclear weapon at the end,
and the extra hour.
Yeah,
Crime Story's whole series were short on Casino.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. It's 22 hours. It was a whole season. And it was epic because of the cops and the criminals. And it was how difficult it was to put a case together. And they started out in Chicago, then they moved to a task force, was actually moved to Vegas to actually keep hunting this guy down. It was just epic feeling of how difficult it was to actually nail this one criminal and how clever he was.
I think you can definitely see the influence on David Simon's work with Miami Vice and Crime Story.
Oh yeah, I mean it wouldn't be the same thing without Michael Mann stuff.
Not black and white; it's just all grey and just that's a definite influence, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's like I want to do something with Crime Story, but I need to rewatch it because it's such an epic. But I've got both seasons on DVD. It's like it is.
I think it does age better than Miami Vice.
Yeah, but both of them age really well though because they were not made for the time. Miami Vice has an element of the 80s, but it was inventing it as it went. Like the 80s were copying it rather than it trying to be the 80s. It was just like this is something cool. And it was going on in Miami at the time, and it was influenced by Scarface. I mean, when would a TV show be influenced by a massive epic gangster film? Usually, that never usually happened. Miami Vice, it was influenced by Scarface. It was so obvious influenced by it.
Yeah,
it was quite a delight to watch something like that just come out of nowhere and go, "Oh, this isn't the A-Team. This isn't." I
mean, granted, I do remember the two female cops pretty much having to dress like prostitutes every single episode, it seems like.
Yeah, I know.
So maybe that's just my imagination, but it's just like, what we're doing this week? You're dressing as prostitutes. It's just like, that's Miami Vice, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. But I remember one of the supporting cops getting killed off.
Yeah.
Like halfway through as well, because the actor wanted to leave. So they killed him off too. It's like if you left, you would get killed off.
Yeah.
And it was like it was pretty brutal. And it was but there were the police officers in Miami Crime, which a lot of the time it was like prostitution, everything linked to prostitution, drugs, and everything else. It became like this thing is like, well, how else would they dress a lot of time?
Yeah.
It kind of felt right because they weren't saying the cops were that. They were just saying this is their job, is to dress like that.
Yeah, but it just became almost like a running joke.
I know. You weren't complaining watching it, were you, though?
No, not really.
No. So this was the 80s, because I mean, I think as we were watching it, because because we came from the same era, we're watching all these things change. I mean, this whole era before we were born, 60s and 50s, of stuff that we never really. We just got a lot of stuff in repeats, like Star Trek and things. But there was, but the
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone was a big thing that I've never really got into because it was before my era, really. But I want to go back. I've got them in streaming the first seasons. I need to go back and watch some of them.
Yeah, I've got the Blu-ray box set, but I haven't really watched that many of them.
Yeah,
due to other things.
But there was a massive bang in the late 80s with Twin Peaks. It was like
Twin Peaks is one of the most influential shows ever.
Yeah,
because after Twin Peaks, but after Twin Peaks, every series about a town, everybody their dark secrets and everything was quirky, and it's all down to Twin Peaks. You still see that in series now.
Yeah, no, but even after Twin Peaks, everything was a bit different. It was just a tonal switch that took place. I think it took about 10 years to really settle in. But I think from Miami Vice and Twin Peaks, you pretty much got the HBO renaissance. Of course, there was an important one we're going to get to. It was also important, but Twin Peaks is one of the big ones where it was like, okay, no one's exactly who they seem. Everybody's complicated, and there's a lot of darkness and you can actually do real horror on TV. Because I mean, some of the stuff in Twin Peaks is genuinely terrifying. Like the scene where you find out who the killer is and he kills his niece is one of the more disturbing scenes you'll ever see in any medium.
And along with Homicide, that was one of the shows where you were desperate for the week in between to fly by.
Yeah,
because you had to wait a week.
I was already suggesting Homicide. We're going to get to Homicide. But Twin Peaks really was that thing because you had the Who Killed Laura Palmer thing for the first half of the story, basically, until they had to tell who it was because no one could survive any longer not knowing. And it was a 2-year-old dad.
Certainly couldn't.
I know, but it was this thing. It was like they wanted to leave it much longer to really build up the stories around it. But it was just amazing. Plus, amazingly fun characters, but they also had darkness to them. Like the more Cooper started off as the most enjoyable detective character you'd seen for years, and then slowly darker undertones were floating under the surface. You started to see pop up with him, and there was a lot of stuff about like abuse and incest and all these other things that were stuff that no one wanted to really touch with Temple Barge Pole that were coming up again and again in this show. Really,
the insidious nature of drugs again coming into small town America as well.
Yeah,
so it wasn't just the big cities; it was small town America being infested by drugs as well.
Yeah, and also some of the characters were helping that happen. Some of the more respectable characters were, involved, and it was, and he didn't even hate the drug deal. It was part of their life. It was just what they were doing because they were screwed up, and it just became this massive explosion in TV of something that was just different. It was just, and again, like some of the other shows we mentioned, like Miami Vice, I didn't really care what was coming before it. We're just like, this is what this is. This is it.
Yeah.
Like it or don't like it, we don't care. This is what we're making.
Yeah.
So there was
another big one for me was Northern Exposure,
which I never watched.
Again, it's absolutely wonderful. Obviously, the last series when they replaced the main character with another main character obviously didn't really work because the whole point was the other main character. As a show that probably went on a season too long, like quite a lot did. But again, that was another one that was moved about the schedule, different days, different times, as if they didn't used to see it.
Yeah, but I think it was, but probably in America wasn't, but over here it was. Yeah. Speaking of shows that went on too long, I have 2 examples here of the Fall of Twin Peaks that were things I watched. It was Red Dwarf.
Yeah,
it was a big thing for a while. In the late 80s, early 90s, it was big. It's still popular, but
I don't think it's aged that well, to be honest.
I think it's aged pretty good. It was always like it was always popular, but I think because of it kept going longer than it should have. There's a certain point it should have stopped. Like the mid-90s, it should have just stopped and said, okay, that's us, we've done our bit, and that's us, let's move on. Instead, it kept on churning more and more stuff out. Then you have The Simpsons.
Have interesting concepts.
Well, yeah, basically, it was basically Dark Star and a TV show. That's it. It worked because it was about dysfunctional people stuck together and having to deal with each other and not getting on and deal with sci-fi concepts, and it was fun, it was weird, but there's only so many times you can do that before it just becomes the same old, same old.
Yeah.
And I think that it kind of suffered a lot from a lack of invention or trying too hard, and actors getting so used to the characters it became kind of boring, you know.
Yeah.
But The Simpsons was even worse for that because it was so good for the first 8 years, and then it just became like a shadow of itself.
Yeah, I would watch it when it was on, but I never really seeked it out that much, to be honest. But it's one of those shows.
Sorry,
it's one of those shows. If it's on, then you watch it. But
yeah, I was a massive fan of it, and I've got the first 10 seasons because even after season 9, 10, there's still some good episodes, but the hit rate starting to drop, and then as halfway through season 10, 11, it just goes off a cliff, and it was like, okay, everybody left, everybody good left, and it just became what was an important, phenomena. Just didn't know when to stop.
Global phenomena.
What?
Global phenomena.
I know.
Huge.
I know. Yeah, I know. But it became so big that they couldn't kill it. And it's like, and it needed to be killed. It's still going on. And who watches it now?
Yeah, knowing when to quit is so important.
I know.
But then there's so much pressure to keep it going.
But then can you have something like South Park, which came in later, and that's been on for years, but they only do a limited amount of episodes per year, and they try to take some time off sometimes, and they have their down periods, but they don't really have a fall off. It's still, you watch South Park now, there's still some funny episodes. There's some ones that don't work because they tried something and didn't work. But there's not been a big drop off that has been with Simpsons, where it's like, it was really funny if you like it, to it's not funny at all.
Yeah.
It's
I used to watch South Park, but haven't watched it for a while.
Yeah. It's
so much stuff going on.
I know. And I think the thing is, after you get a joke for certain shows, it's like, well, why are you still making them? It's like, we got the joke, just stop when it was good and let it be good. So is there anyone that I think I'm missing here from the late 80s, early 90s that is important?
Don't think so.
Yeah, because I've been noticing that I've been putting stuff up, but I'm also thinking I want to try and make sure I haven't missed anything important for you. Have I missed any show so far that's really important that I haven't brought up?
I would say stuff like Columbo and Quincy. I used to watch religiously, especially Quincy. Again, not objectively great shows, but there was something quite satisfying about them.
Yeah.
And again, Columbo was kind of interesting in the sense it would show you who the murderer was at the start, which not all whodunits do that. And that was a kind of interesting twist. Again, it was probably a show that went on way too long. But I always had a soft spot for Quincy, even though, again, objectively, it's not a great show, but it's just something comforting about it.
Yeah. I remember I used to watch Sherlock Holmes, the Jeremy Brett one, a lot through the 80s. Yeah. I got the box set of the DVDs, and I'm waiting for the Blu-rays to come out at some point. Yeah. Hopefully at some point. Because they look gorgeous, and it's like they deserve the Blu-ray.
It's a bit later, but Monk was kind of like that as well.
Again, I never really watched
Tony
that.
Shalhoub.
Yeah. Those kind of shows I don't really watch. It's not really my kind of thing. So,
fair enough.
Yep. So before we go on to Homicide, I think we should talk about films we watched on TV, because I think at a certain point, Movietron come up. and
Yeah,
started.
Moviedrome is arguably the most important thing in my film watching journey at the start. Because there was just films in Moviedrome that were never on television. I mean, in the olden days, BBC Two, for example, at Christmas was really good at putting on Bergman seasons. Channel 4 used to put on like Hong Kong or Jackie Chan and the Mr. Vampire and Chinese Ghost Story. So BBC Two late at night used to be very good for putting on film seasons. And then Moviedrome came along, first with Alex Cox and Mark Cousins. And again, you were exposed to films that just were never on. And so many of those films became some of my all-time favourites.
Yeah, but it kind of really peaked for Alex Cox. So I mean, I think the Mark Cousins ones, there was some good films shown, but he wasn't the same as Alex Cox. Alex Cox was something to take the mickey at the film was shown, and he was much tougher and more interesting about the films. And even if sometimes a film we didn't like Terminator, he would be interesting about it.
Yeah,
he wasn't keen in the film, and it's like I was much more religious about watching it when there was Alex Cox, because you knew there's always something interesting going to happen, and I always knew I was going to be recording it.
Yeah,
like
I mean, some of them, the ones that I didn't like, I still actually kept the intros on VHS because that's how sad I am.
Yeah, because intros are really good. They were interesting just about what was going on in the film and what was about, what was fascinating. And even somebody who disagreed with Alex Cox on his assessment of the film, but who cares? It was interesting to hear.
Because I had already seen Manhunter on VHS, but he did Manhunter, and his intro to Manhunter's brilliant as well.
Even though he didn't like it as well.
Yeah, especially when he talks about everybody standing with their heads like this on one side.
I know.
But his intro to Manhunter is fantastic.
Yeah, he's saying it was almost Live and Let Die, the same thing. Or not, To Live and Die in LA was the same.
Yeah.
It was everyone's straight heads going on face like, yeah. But yeah, no, but it was really important. But I also remember when I was a kid, I was a teenager, always buying VHS tapes to record whatever was coming out at Christmas, the weird films at 2 in the morning. Because you'd get some really interesting stuff that would never be shown in our time. It would probably take you months to get through them all.
Yeah.
All the stuff you're recording. I think my poor machine was getting every night, something was getting recorded at Christmas period.
Yeah, because I ended up having two. So if you were recording films on ITV or Channel 4, I would re-edit them and cut out the adverts because it was that sad.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's sad.
And I would do that with American football as well. I would re-edit them and cut them down and take the adverts out.
So how expensive were your therapy bills?
Quite a lot, and my VHS tapes were to buy packs and packs of them.
I know I used to have this massive set of them. Like they would just go everywhere. It's like, where do you put them all? Plus whatever films you're buying in VHS as well. It was like this, disaster of way too much stuff.
Cupboard full of VHSs, and then it became a cupboard full of DVDs, and now it's like Blu-rays. It's just like
yeah, the things never change.
No.
Yeah. So you go into Homicide then, since it's
Homicide's one of the big ones.
Yeah. Because Homicide was the one that really led to the HBO sensation, because Homicide was written by Tom Fontana. He was a producer. He would go on to create Oz. And then in HBO, which then would create the interest in HBO of actually doing more shows like Oz, which created them putting money into Sopranos. So it all pretty much came from Homicide.
Yeah.
Is a big thing. And Homicide's still one of the great shows ever made. Some of the stuff, even though it did go on a bit too long, it was like a season too long.
Yeah.
But even that season had some good stuff in there as well. But it was like the funny thing is we had to buy them in DVD eventually, but they stopped the season before it ended in the UK, and that was almost like a proper ending for the show. It was like that was a good end you get at the end of the season before when all hell broke loose. But some of the stuff in that show was almost astonishing.
Yeah, because the last season went on a bit too much about their relationships away from the job, and it got more about that and less actually about the job. It was just amazing because it was the first cop show, to my knowledge anyway, that some episodes they didn't actually catch the person who did it. Some episodes it's the wrong person. Some it's messy. The moral decisions they have to make. I always remember the one about the doctor who refused to treat the gangbanger who ended up dying. And at the end, Bayliss and Pemberton are sitting in the car, and obviously Bayliss is having like such a difficult time about it. She's a good doctor, but she did this, and it's just that it's all grey. None of it's black and white.
Plus the most dysfunctional people there were the cops.
Yeah,
they were. You had some epically dysfunctional characters. I mean, it started off a really dark show, and you had some really good characters throughout it. But I mean, they were dysfunctional. I mean, Pemberton was the best cop, but he was also the most messed up person in the show. Well, at least till Kellerman arrived. I think those two kind of were trying to see who could be the most dysfunctional character on the show.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the guest stars as well, with Robin Williams and Steve Buscemi. There's a litany of them. It's just so well done and just ahead of the game. And the fact they did it without swearing. There wasn't like lots of sex in it. There wasn't lots of violence in it. That obviously that would come later with HBO. But the fact that they achieved all of that just with great writing and great acting and true stuff.
I remember there was one with Munch where he was talking about a girl he fancies as a kid who's turned out dead, and he had to do a case with Kellerman, and it was such a haunting story, and it was just and it's just not what you'd expect, and suddenly it was this great story in the middle of these other story threads that was just excellent in itself.
Or the Adina Watson thread in the episode, which is just all in the one room.
Yeah.
It's just so well written. And they fail, exactly.
Yeah. And then Luther Mahoney's thread, where they do all that stuff, and then they fail again.
Yeah.
And then one of them shoots them.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that becomes another season of paranoia as they start to turn on each other, and it's like, ends up in a bloodbath.
And how that specific chicken comes home to roost is just amazing as well.
I know, because you can see their point of view, but you also see it was wrong. And it was, and the thing is that the person who shot him, he wasn't the one who instigated the whole mess in the first place.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. And there was also how his partner was the one that actually started it, and he's the one that did not take any responsibility at all for what happened. And it was like, you were the one that started it. It's really your fault for half of the problem is your fault.
Of course, I haven't even mentioned the great Yaphet Kotto.
I know.
G, just one of the greatest TV characters of all time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the thing is everybody was good in it. They were all so good. Some of the actors were, and actors they don't get enough good parts now.
Yeah.
I mean, most actors in that show should have been getting lead parts after that, and it never happened.
But it is funny how sometimes a television actor who's just synonymous with that role, even when they try and do film parts, it's just not the same, It's just...
Yeah. Yeah, but it was so much really dark stuff there. And a lot of subtle things as well was floating throughout.
Yeah. But just the truth in it, as far as, Giardello's character, as far as how he treats the people beneath him, but then how he's treated by the brass.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can tell it's authentic. It's not just somebody imagining what happens in a police department.
An idea that a lot of them don't like each other, but they put up with each other.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And it's like they respect each other, even though they don't actually always. They butt heads a lot of time, and they are sarcastic and nasty to each other, and
because we've seen it before, where the sergeant or whoever would shout at all the cops or whatever, but generally all the cops would be kind of pally with each other, whereas Homicide kind of showed that more realistically that that's not really the case.
Yeah, I mean, they really get shouted at just once in a while, But usually they talked it over. It's like, what's the problem? What's the issue we're actually trying to work out? It was much more reasonable, but also there would be times when someone would just be a dick.
Yeah.
Which was nice too. Someone's just been
And apart from anything else, it's a really good procedural as well to actually see how investigations work, which hadn't really been done before, I don't think, in that degree. You know, there's a brilliant one where somebody dies in a fire and we pretty much follow the body from being burned, and at the end of the episode he's cremated officially, so he's burned again, and we just follow the body as the investigation goes along. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, and there was also stuff about the hauntings of other departments that were around before. Like Kellerman idea was he was in the fire department, and then the corruption of there follows him to homicide, even though he'd nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And how that kind of seeds his downfall. And it's just things like that, like complications of different departments, try to deal with different departments, try to deal with your own department. And it's also just what they were doing, going to murder and all the dark humor they had for the morgue attendants and all the rest of it, and all the conversations they were having outside the actual investigation.
Yeah. It's just a brilliant example of world building.
Yeah. Because everyone felt like they were important to the show.
Yeah.
Really. So, yeah, Homicide was great. We have to avoid going on about that for the rest of the podcast, because we could, as you can probably tell, we're massive fans of this show.
I really need to rewatch it again, but it's just finding the time.
I know. But then it led to Oz, which is the next big thing. It was overlapping a bit with Homicide, and that's great as well.
Oz is truly disturbing.
Yeah, I know.
And how they got away with some of the stuff. Some of the stuff they got away with is just like...
I know, it was like... and it's, again, so many great characters and so many disturbing aspects to the characters, and so... I mean, the idea was they were talking about Homicide, like, what happens to all the guys they arrest? And then they did an episode on it thinking, we can do a lot more with this. And so they'd made Oz, which was about the guys who were arrested. And the thing is, even though it wasn't the same characters, some of the actors who had been arrested from Homicide would end up in Oz anyway. Yeah.
It's an absolutely brutal show that I think is underseen, perhaps because of its brutality and nobody wants to like...
I know, plus it's multiracial. Homicide and Oz were both genuinely multiracial, and the interesting interactions came in a multiracial thing. It didn't really matter. Race was important, but also a lot of the character interactions were between different races and how they approach certain things from different perspectives, and that's what's interesting. I mean, in Oz you had like white nationalists and Muslims, extremist Muslims who were going to defend themselves, and all these people caught in between them, and serial killers and utter sociopaths, gangsters. Yeah. You know, really a narration of some character who died like halfway through, and we still narrate it from the death.
Yeah, and it kind of also talked about sexual violence in prison, honestly and authentically and brutally, which obviously other prison shows sometimes just skirt around and don't really mention. You know, it's just...
Plus, a lot of people uncomfortable because there's male and male rape, which made a lot of people uncomfortable. It was like, you can't show that. And it's like, why not? It happens a lot. Don't be such a prude.
Because if you kind of look at the three big shows from those creators, you know, probably one of the reasons why they haven't been as broadly liked by everybody is because of racial things where they're set, and obviously how truthful and honest they are.
Yeah, because it shows all the races complicated. It's not like a simplified version of it. It's like, this is complex and there's no one solution. And people from different races are all interesting, no matter where they come from. They've all got their own point of view.
And a lot of people, when they watch TV, just don't want to think about those kind of things.
Yeah, which is a point Homicide made quite a lot. It was like the media was useless. So we go into The Wire then, basically, since we've talked a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's the big three.
Yeah. I've got to say, even though The Wire is so good, I prefer Homicide.
Yeah, I prefer Homicide by a snitch.
Yeah.
By a smidgen.
Yeah, it's like, it's so good. I mean, it's like, It's funny because when I was one of the funny things I felt was like the McNulty and his partner, their relationship just felt like it was an extension of the Kellerman and his partner relationship, because you'd one Irish hothead and a black partner who was much more sane and much more realistic with life. It was almost like they took those two characters and it's like, okay, that's what we're doing because there was more here than we managed to do in Homicide.
Yeah, I mean, for me, McNulty's the weak link in The Wire. I think he's the least interesting character. Again, Bunk's fantastic.
Yeah.
And obviously, the criminals are fantastic because the criminals, as we know, are portrayed as actually having more of a code than the politicians, the mayor candidates, the police.
But they didn't overdo the code though, because they're also showing to be ruthless and vicious to each other, and ultimately, code doesn't mean much. It's what they're trying to live by, but they fail so much at it.
But there's some things that they won't even do, or some of their characters won't.
Some of them won't do. Other ones will.
Yeah. Whereas obviously the politicians and the police brass are just like, they'll pretty much do anything to get in.
Yeah, by the final season, every side's bullshitting each other pretty horrifically.
Yeah.
But the final season gets a lot of trash about it because it was shorter and they even didn't have enough time to fill it out. But I quite like the fact that it was just everyone bullshit. Everyone devolved into them all bullshitting each other. It just became madness at the end.
It's amazing world building because even smaller characters still have their own story and it feels real, and they have their own. I mean, Slim, for example, is a great. He is one of those members of the gang that does have a code and does kind of go, well, I'm not going to do that, or he specifically shoots somebody for just like crossing a line and just going, that's out of order.
Yeah, I don't care.
But even smaller characters, because he's not like a huge character in it. They have their own stories, and it's just so well done.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like he is a drug dealer. He is doing all this stuff, but it's like, there's some things that are too much.
Yeah,
and even the cops. There's some of the cops that bunker the same. It's like, this is as far as I'm going to go, and I'm not going further. There's a line here that you have crossed it.
Again, the language. Again, some people say it's difficult to get into, but I mean, not to be hyperbolic, but it's a bit like Shakespeare once you actually get into it and understand the rhythm and what they're actually saying. It's just brilliantly written.
The funny thing is the Meldrick Lewis character, which was basically the Bunk from Homicide, he was much more morally ambiguous than Bunk, ultimately, because he's the one who basically caused half the mess of the Mahoney case and stuff like that. He was kind of... He caused a lot of havoc. He was much more morally ambiguous than Bunk. Bunk's actually much more straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, that was the one thing I thought the criticism of The Wire was. I thought the cops, some of them could have been more interesting because you were much more interested in the villains, the supposed villains, than they were with the cops. Yeah, and it was better with the cops that were more interesting, the ones who were to the side of the main investigation, ultimately, than...
With the exception of Bunk, probably all my favourite characters are the bad people.
Yeah, supposed bad.
In inverted commas.
Yeah, but it was all still interesting. I mean, the funny thing with The Wire is to get a chance with the best, one of the best. I think 2 seasons I liked most from The Wire were 2 and 4. Well, 2 was about the ports, and 4 was about the school system. And they were the 2 that were the more dicey ones. And initially, they were the ones that got the stiffy reviews. But I think they're the ones that hold up better because they're about where do the drugs come in and why do they come in, and what's the next generation of drug dealers coming through. And it's like it's much more human because it's the drugs affecting the normal world. Yeah,
but it was so ballsy to do season 2. You've had this success with season 1, all about gangsters you'd created, Stringer Bell was so popular and Omar, and then season 2 we're going to take them and put them on the sideline and we're going to actually talk about something else.
It's the Sabatas who are just basically the guys in the docks, and they were the most moving characters in that season because even Ziggy, who was self-destructive to the max, was still a sympathetic character.
The ending montage is just so amazing.
And I liked how the Nicky character was just like so torn between everybody, and he ended up being like was no way out for him. He was just screwed.
Yeah. And obviously the line, we used to make things in this country.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
because you felt
so
bad for Frank, even though he'd sowed his own destruction, but he was still trying to do his best in a situation that was never going to help him.
But again, that's just brilliant writing.
Yeah.
You feel things for people that society says you shouldn't be feeling things for.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think that's one thing that American shows beyond Homicide, beyond Twin Peaks did. They actually started to bring out the kind of complications.
Yeah.
I mean, it did start with Miami Vice, though, but then I think Twin Peaks managed to slow down even more and do in more detail, and then Homicide did it even better. Then it spread after that. I mean, The Sopranos is one of the big shows from this era, which I'm okay with, but it's not my favorite, really.
I have never seen The Sopranos, I'll admit. I've never seen an episode.
I haven't finished it because it's well written, but it was just the thing is I don't like the lead character. And there's something about him, he's really well acted, really good actor playing him. But at a certain point, it becomes so self-indulgent, it became like, I can't really follow this anymore because I've lost the thread of where I want to follow this guy.
Yeah.
And it was like there were other shows that going on at the same time I just thought were better. Like, my favourite show of this era was not The Wire, it was actually Deadwood. Which...
Yeah, I need to rewatch that. I haven't seen it since I saw it.
Yeah, which was funny because I liked it over The Wire because it came from David Milch, who did NYPD Blue, and I was a Homicide guy.
Yeah.
So that kind of put me off at the start, but then it was like, no, this is nothing like NYPD Blue. This is actually great characters and complications, and you know, where your hero characters so stiff and so like repressed, and your villain character is so human. And it's by them trying it on and trying to survive within this political minefield. And you had the serial killer in season 2, it was just terrifying. And you had all these weird, the prostitution characters, the owners of different establishments. It was all just brilliant.
Yeah, because again, it was grey areas.
Yeah. I mean, Hearst was probably the big villain, the one guy who wasn't as grey as everyone else, but he was still grey compared to... He just was such a villain, really.
Yeah, I still haven't watched the film.
The film's really good. It's a good ending. I mean, it's not as good as some of the individual episodes, but it's a good, solid bring together the entire story and finishing it off. Yeah. So you've got a satisfying conclusion to the characters. So that it feels completed, because it didn't for a long time. It didn't. I mean, some of the small characters, the Brad Dourif's character, who's the doc, who's also like he's interested in science, and he's just as a weird character. It looks like he could be Igor from a Frankenstein movie.
Yes.
And he gave Brad Dourif so much to play because normally he just gets told be the weirdo. Now he's a weirdo, but he's a really complicated weirdo, a very humane weirdo.
There's a thin line between weirdos and complicated weirdos.
Yep. But that was the thing, and also they had the thing about having Timothy Olyphant as a complicated character you might not like, and he's your lead.
Yeah.
And actually having the patience to follow him through the seasons as he slowly thaws out a little bit and starts to become more human. You know, and realizing just like he's stuck to a certain code, and it's this code that's making him nuts. And it's like, that was really interesting because most shows would not have the guts to do that.
Yeah. And he would go on to do Justified, which was a lot of fun.
I just love Justified. It's not the same level as Deadwood, but it's
not
enjoyable.
But it's just a lot of fun.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's just him and Walton Goggins just facing off each other season after season. It's just like, that was maybe one of the most enjoyable shows of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Just for pure enjoyment. Yeah. Of actors playing off each other and just having a load of fun. A lot of character actors having little bits and bobs.
Yeah.
And so many Deadwood actors coming into it throughout. Yes. It's pretty much a Deadwood retirement home for actors. It was like, you're in Deadwood, come over here.
Obviously
we'll give you before episodes and we'll kill you.
Obviously Breaking Bad Walter White's wife was in Deadwood.
I know. And I have to say, I think one of the reasons why I like Deadwood over The Wire a little bit is because I identified more with the lead characters in this than I did with The Wire, because I was not as enamored with McNulty as I was with the Timothy Olyphant character.
Yeah, I still prefer The Wire, but
yeah, well, just different tastes, really.
Yeah.
I was more of a
even though
Deadwood
I
guy.
agree, even though, like I said, McNulty to me is the least interesting character.
He was still a good character.
Even though he drives everything pretty much.
Yeah, he's a good character. It's just the thing is, he's intensely annoying.
Yeah.
And the show knows he's annoying.
Yeah.
He's not like your brave character. No, he's self-destructive. You want to punch him a lot of the time.
Yes.
He's like
as does everybody in the show.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the good thing is that kind of character is he drives the chaos of the finale. He causes this utter destruction. He finally hits bomb and causes so much destruction.
Another little nice detail about The Wire that I like is the fact the actor that played Luther Mahoney turns up as an ME.
I know.
Which completely freaked me out the first time I saw
know.
It. It was like, that's Luther Mahoney.
Yeah. They had a rule, if you played a cop in Homicide, you had to play a villain in The Wire. It was not...
It was just a shocker when Luther Mahoney turns up.
I know, it was weird.
Alternate universe. That's changed his career.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm trying to look at 2000s, and that was a period where you start to get stuff coming up like Breaking Bad and things. I think they were more 2010s onwards, really. Because Breaking Bad took a while to catch on.
Yeah.
Although
I didn't see it until it was all over.
Did you know? I started fairly early because I heard about it and I got the first season cheap. I was like, oh, I like this. So I was pretty much getting it season by season and being snobbish with people who saw it at the end. But when they saw it at the end, I was like, lightweight.
Yeah.
It was the one show I was actually ahead of.
Yeah.
In The Wire. The Wire and that one I was actually ahead of. Most of the other ones I was behind.
I mean, I do think Breaking Bad's very good, but I do feel every season probably could have been at least an episode shorter. But it's still very good. But
it's a very good show. It's one of those ones that's like, I like other ones better, but it's still excellent. It's still some really good stuff, really good characters. And I really liked the final, that movie they made afterwards.
Still haven't seen El Camino.
It's really good. It does give a few more characters a send-off. And you get Robert Forster his final performance in it, and it came out pretty much as he died. Just as the day he died, this came out. It's like, well, that's a way to go. Die and then have a great performance and an acclaimed show appear.
Yeah.
That's an exit.
Yeah, that's how to do it, probably.
Yeah, but I'd definitely say watch El Camino. It's really good. I was really impressed by it. Because it went in direction I didn't expect. But it was...
it's been in my basket for some time.
Yep. But... So a few of my old shows from childhood got rebooted this period as well, like Galactica and Doctor Who.
Yes. I like the Galactica reboot. It's not perfect. And like I said, I never really went back to the rebooted Doctor Who.
Yeah. Now I went back to both, but I really enjoyed Doctor Who. Though my favourite, I like there's some Doctors I like more. Like I like Eccleston's Doctor because he was actually insane. I like Matt Smith's because he was a lunatic, and Capaldi because he was grumpy and dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And he was nasty to all the lot of people he had to try and help, which I thought was a nice touch. Having Capaldi just been rude to people who he's meant to try order around, and then it's like, you're a dick, type of thing.
Yeah.
But Galactica was really good. It was a really good reboot. They did have problems, but it's kind of funny because I love both versions of Galactica for different reasons. The first one's nostalgia. I have a real nostalgia feel for the original. I was just a fan of it, even though I know it wasn't that great. And the remake was so much better in so many ways, but it's also interesting. It was his own thing.
Edward James Olmos.
Yes. And it also brought Richard Hatch back from the original and had him play a kind of villainous character. And that was a nice touch of actually having Like
Yeah.
using an actor from the original, but instead of giving him the hero part, giving him an interesting supporting partner. Like that's the nice, classy way to connect to shows.
Yeah.
You know, because you're not being lazy about it. You're actually giving an actor some respect and saying, we don't want you to do the same thing again. We'll give you something new and unique.
Yeah.
And a really good cast. I mean, I think Ty was one of the characters everyone loved because he was so drunk and he was so messed up. Now you can identify with those kind of characters a lot more because it's people appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also obviously the real love story in that show was between Ty and Adama.
Yes.
Very much. That's what it was.
Yeah. And Mary McDonnell. It's fantastic.
Yeah, she was terrific, but sometimes her character was inconsistently written. Was one of the things.
Yeah.
That was kind of. I think that was a character that problem. And you also had Baltar as the most sniveling, weirdest villain ever. Just crazy.
Yeah.
I quite liked how he always reinvented himself continually, no matter what happened. He'd always land his feet somehow. But he was actually genuinely insane throughout the whole show. Like they never hid the fact he was a vain, crazy person, but also a genius.
Yeah. Well, the fact he was pretty much to blame for the whole thing.
Yeah, and he didn't die. Everyone else died, but he survived, which was great because most shows he would die. Like almost every film where the person makes a mistake and so many people die, they will die for it. And this show, no, he does not die. Everyone else does.
Yeah, and he'll probably die pretty quickly as well.
I know. And it was like, no, he kept on going. He was like Clay Davis from The Wire. No one could touch him. It's like no one could, no matter what he did, it would just land his feet. And it was like, I love characters like that who are just like, no matter how much damage they cause for decent people, they will survive. But I think what Baltar was, he didn't actually mean malice most of the time. He was just selfish and weak, and it wasn't like plotting to kill all the humans. He just did stupid stuff and had just horrible instincts. It was almost like it was kind of George Costanza from Seinfeld, where just do the opposite of what you instinctively do, and you'll be fine.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
I mean, another show for me I missed out is Millennium, which was Chris Carter's follow-up to the X-Files. I was never a big X-Files fan. There's some good episodes that I've seen, but I've never watched it religiously.
Yeah.
But Millennium was so good with Lance Henriksen. Well, it was so good for about a season and a half. I think it had that Twin Peaks thing of in the middle. They get so caught up with the thing that all TV shows get caught up, quite a lot get caught up with, the whole conspiracy theories. So it started off as Lance Henriksen working cases, which was wonderful and dark, like Seven, but even darker and better. But then it got caught up with conspiracies within conspiracies and shadow conspiracies, and it kind of get bogged down in that.
Yeah, I never saw it.
You should check out the first season.
I get burnt out by the X-Files because I enjoyed it for the first few seasons, and then the conspiracy get really stupid, and it was like, give up. It's like
the first season of Millennium I would highly recommend because it's pretty much all just cases. It's only the second and third season where it gets a bit daft.
Yeah, that's the problem. That Chris Carter guy is really dumb conspiracies. It's as soon as he has to flesh it out, it's always like, that's it.
Yeah. Whereas the first season is serial killers, and it's really good.
I'll have to take a look at some point. A serial killer show I liked a lot from 2010 was Hannibal.
Yes, Hannibal is excellent. The second best Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, it was just so. Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter was great cast. I was really surprised Hugh Dancy's Will Graham really worked because I didn't expect him.
I had my misgivings about that, but it does work. Lawrence Fishburne.
I know, because that was the thing. When I had to cast him, I was like, well, that show's dead. So it's like, there's no way that's going to work. He's not the right actor for that. And then he saw him and was like, oh, yeah, he actually works, isn't that? He just looks crazy. Because Will Graham's crazy.
Sadly, they did cancel it.
I know.
Season 3. So season 3 ends a bit rushed, maybe. But
I know. But you still get 3 seasons of this weird show. I mean, I'm amazed that it lasts beyond 6 episodes for some of the stuff it does. I mean, it's like,
yeah, it's pretty brutal and pretty dark.
Some of the deaths are astonishing.
Yeah,
And I loved the end of the first season where Graham's actually in the nut house and everyone thinks he's a serial killer. Hannibal set him up, and it's like, that's such a great ending. It's such a totally un-TV like ending. It doesn't feel like a TV show. This one is almost like the thing that would lead to Twin Peaks Return is like, it's a TV show, but it doesn't feel like a TV show. It just feels like it's much better when it's just been a long story and it's just being itself and weird. And
yeah, Gillian Anderson's in it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and then it's just a lot of supporting characters that were really cool. And they brought Mason Verger in and showed him before he gets his face ripped off. And
yeah,
and they did a Clue Starling sorter, and then they just had her kidnapped and mutilated and everything. It was like, wow, they're just like, they don't care. They're just to do whatever they want. It was all, and then they took some stuff from the books I really liked and did weird twists on them. So it's like, you enjoy it if you don't read the books, but if you read the books, you'll really enjoy it because you'll know what they're referencing and they're doing something odd. And
it's one that I had misgivings about, but that is so good.
Yeah. The funny thing is, it was actually a much better Hannibal, like the book Hannibal. It's much more attuned to the book Hannibal than the film Hannibal is. The actual book, because a lot of the tone of the show feels very much like what they did with Hannibal, the actual book, that they just did not touch. All the disturbing stuff of the Hannibal, the book, was just not put in the film. And this show was like, yeah, we're on all of this. We'll take all of it. Thanks for not doing all the good stuff. We'll use it.
Yeah.
And
And again, in that TV format, when they've got longer time, you can build the characters. You don't have to squeeze everything into a 2-hour film. So that also helps.
Yeah, it's just so good. I mean, I instantly want to watch it again, just talking about it. Actually, most of these shows we're talking about that I instantly want to rewatch.
You can pick up the Blu-ray set for less than 15 quid at the moment.
I know I'm actually glad you can, because it means people can actually go and see it and they're not going to spend a fortune on it. Speaking of spending a fortune, a show I spent a fortune on as they were released. I didn't see them when they were shown, because we really got them over here, which is Seinfeld. I bought them later in the box sets. And I really got addicted to these. Just the humor just got to me. It was just my sense of humor. It was just these 4 selfish people just behaving horribly, but charmingly, and New York suffers throughout. And they get weird story. Did you watch Seinfeld?
No, I mean, again, for me, it's like The Simpsons. I would watch it if it was on, but I wouldn't watch it religiously.
I think with comedy, it's like you either click or you don't click.
Yeah.
Certain things.
I preferred Curb Your Enthusiasm. That kind of clicked with me more.
Yeah, that's weird, because I think I have a dark sensibility, but for some reason I prefer Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Probably because the darkness is hidden below the surface a little bit, and it's all there. And I think quite like the idea of like everyone thinks it's a funny, charming show, but it's really about sociopaths. And
I mean, it is kind of subversive because it is set up as a sitcom. The way it's shot, it looks almost like Cheers or something, or Frasier, but it is actually darker underneath.
Yeah. Which was why it took a while for it to take off, because people didn't quite get it for a while until they finally clicked to it. But so other shows, comedy shows that I really liked in the 2000s, the 30 Rock and Community were the 2 ones I kind of where they were kind of my shows that I really liked.
Yeah, 2 more I haven't seen.
Yeah. I mean, 30 Rock's weird. 30 Rock's just strange. It's like it's almost like a massive in-joke, and it's a gag factory, and you either get it or you don't. It's like one of those shows, like, after the 3 episodes, you know instantly, either I'm in it or I'm not watching this show ever again.
Yeah.
And Community's the same way, where there's lots of weird things, and it's like, either get it or you don't. It's like, what kind of comedy shows do you like? If any? Are you too busy being tortured?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Toast of London, the IT Crowd,
I don't into
I
IT
mean,
crowd. I just never
they're
quite
not.
get into that one.
Yeah, I mean, they're not generationally good or anything, but they're enjoyable. Back to the olden days, Kids in the Hall, the Canadian one, which is offbeat. It's kind of like third generation Monty Python and does take a lot from
Yeah.
Monty Python. I recently got the box sets and DVD.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't really watch that much television anymore just because I've got so much films to watch. So it's kind of almost flipped from the early days where all you watched was television, films and TV, whereas now I don't really watch that much television at all.
Yeah, I mean, I actually found like when I was going through them, writing stuff down, it was like I was good 80s, 90s, 2000s. I was good for lots of shows then, but 2005, I started to really struggle because it was like, yeah, I mean, there was a couple of shows I liked, but there was nothing that jumped out. I mean, I watched Futurama a lot like it, but it's like you don't like The Simpsons, you don't like Futurama probably. And
I always preferred Futurama to The Simpsons.
Yeah, I do too, actually, but it's less popular. But there was really nothing. I mean, I watched when I'm watching Galactica and Doctor Who. I watched Breaking Bad, but I wasn't watching stuff religiously. There was stuff I'd watch, but it wasn't like a passion. The last time I had a real passion was Twin Peaks: The Return. It was the one that kind of brought me back.
That was something that, again, like we've mentioned before, I didn't have that high expectations for it because I was like, how can you, how's this going to work? But it just absolutely blew me away. It's arguably one of the best things in the last 20 years or 15 years. It's one of those shows you wanted to watch all of them, but you also didn't want to watch all of them because then it'd be over.
Yeah, no. It's like I've got it in Blu-ray, and I watched it as it came out, and it's like I want to rewatch, but I want to leave it a little bit as well because I want to watch and enjoy it again and see it more in pace. And it's like I don't really want to rush it, and which I'm the same way with the original show as well, where I like watching it every so often and forgetting little bits and bobs and then experiencing it. It's like,
it's a really good show when, yes, you want to watch all of it, but then you don't want to rush it and you don't want to watch all of it because then it'll be over.
Yeah, but it was just how they did it. It was the idea of Dougie. You have Cooper's Dougie for most of the show, but he's also Cooper's evil Cooper, who's actually scary. Cooper's the menace of the show for most of it. He's the villain, but he's also the hero who's can't get rid of his body. And it's the goodness of Dougie is the thing that affects all these people. You've also these weird bits of darkness throughout Twin Peaks itself and the returning characters.
And some of the scariest stuff he's ever done.
I know, some of the that kid in the car, when Bobby goes out and and that's the thing, how they brought some of the characters back and actually aged them. So it felt like legitimate aging. It wasn't like we'll do the sentimental version. It's like, no, some people have moved on, they're not there anymore. Other people have changed their tune.
Yeah, Bobby is a police officer.
I know, and the thing is, that was one of the most moving characters. And
it's also believable.
Yeah, but also worked because you'd see he's still emotional. And he's one of the best bits in it where he reacts to the case file when it opens Laura Palmer case file, and it's like you'd see he's still under his skin somewhere, and also no response to his father. He's like, even if he didn't get that much screen time, his character's actually got a lot of important stuff in the film. And James as well come back, and he'd important bit.
Yeah, like a lot of Lynch's stuff, it shouldn't really work, but it really does.
Yeah, and then Robert Foster coming in as Truman's brother, and he had some great stuff. And that astonishing bit when Michael Cera appears as Lucy's son, and it's so
Marlon
weird
Brando.
and wonderful.
Yeah, it's just,
and it's like, it's perfect casting, and it's just so wonderfully odd.
Yeah,
and every time Evil Cooper shows up, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
and you finally got to see Diane, and she's really disturbed, and it's like it's really dark, and you have the double act of David Lynch and Miguel Ferrer.
Yes.
Which is just great, even though Ferrer died not long after it, but it was great to see those two together. It was such a cool double act.
It has such an emotional weight as well when you see the log lady.
Yeah.
She died fairly quickly after it as well.
Yeah, and
But
you saw the doctor who also died not long after it, and there's quite a few of them who died. It was quite funny though seeing Cooper and not Cooper, the David Lynch character and Albert together as they've actually a double act throughout the series, and it's like they were barely together during the original show. Really, ultimately, there's a couple of scenes. It's like, and now they're a great double act.
Yeah.
It was funny because it was terrifying, but it also was really emotional.
Yeah, it was really a moving program, bizarrely, even though it was terrifying at times.
I know, and it totally changed everything in the last episode as well, and became something else, and it was like, wow, and it was terrifying as well in a different way, and it was just weird, and it was like utterly satisfying, but you don't know why. It
might actually be the most emotional thing he's ever made.
Yeah, it's just so good. It's like it's almost like a great defense of television. If you can do something as good as this, you're seeing all these great shows around, you're thinking, well, most of them didn't impress me to be great shows. They impressed me if something's been good. Like, I enjoy Mad Men, but I don't think it's a great show. I think it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
but
it's another one I've never seen.
I haven't got to the end yet, but it's like, it's enjoyable. It's really enjoyable, but it's like, I'm not watching it thinking I'm watching a great show. I'm thinking I'm watching a good show. But it doesn't feel like a top tier thing.
Again, sometimes there's value in just being able to switch off and watch an enjoyable show.
Yeah, I mean, it does have some deeper themes, but I don't think it ever really gets to them as well as some of the best shows. I mean,
let's be honest. Sorry. Let's be honest, even making a show that's enjoyable from beginning to end is really difficult to do.
I know.
Let alone make something that's top tier.
I know, because we're talking about Justified the other. It's like, it's such an enjoyable show. I mean, it's not the most depthful show, but it's just enjoyable watching all those actors in that setting. It's just great just to sit back and enjoy
the
good craftsmanship.
The whole season with the woman who's in charge of the gang and her poisonous moonshine. It's just so good.
Yeah, and the season where they're trying to find this old character, this legendary villain, and it turns out to be someone you've seen from the other 3 seasons. It turns out it was someone you'd never, who looks harmless.
Yeah,
because he's changed his life, and it's like it was just a nice, weird tweak.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I mean, TV shows are great. There's also some stuff we haven't talked about that came before we were around that were important. Really, ultimately, the BBC produced stuff like Peter Watkins, Alan Clark, Play for Today's, and brought in a lot of like important directors for British film, like Mike Leigh and Ken Loach. Even though I'm not a big Ken Loach fan, he's also an important director for Britain.
Yeah,
and there was like, that's what you get from British TV, is you get a lot of really good people doing some really good work.
Yeah, that's when the BBC actually stood for something.
Yeah, I mean, why don't they do Play for Days now? It's
probably people wouldn't watch it and the talent's not there.
The talents are there. You could put in BBC Two and have it as a flagship quite easily. Yeah. It would be simple to do. It's just this lack of willpower. It's like, you have to go and find like proper playwrights and proper writers to actually put on something that's difficult. I don't want a controversy. Yeah. That's what it's about. I don't want controversy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want Alan Clark type of thing with Scum, or Peter Watkins with War Game, which were two of the most important films made in those eras, because they actually get banned because they were so accurate. And it's like, that's what they need to be doing nowadays, especially with this government and what it's doing. And they won't do it. They're too cowardly.
But then the BBC's pretty much run by the government, so.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so sad that they've let it go to ruin, because I mean, they had a big thing of being respected from the 70s and 80s, they Play for the Day and things like that, and it's like, well, what happened to it? Even in the 80s, we're still doing Alan Clark stuff. We're still doing things like that. And then Channel 4 doing stuff like that, and then eventually 90s, they seem to just sort of become ambitious to just be Americanized.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you stick to what you're good at, actually, what your strengths are? You could probably sell a lot of stuff overseas if you actually invest. Like, you could make the films for Play Today and then like sell them overseas. and probably make profit out of them because it'd be different from everything else.
Yeah, it's not as if it's high production values because you can just put people in 2 rooms and that's your play for the day.
I know. I mean, you could sell it in so many ways, and it'd be like simple. You could actually do something about what's going on in the world. You didn't have to be flashy directing. You could just have interesting writers and good actors. There's plenty of good actors who are getting given trash to do most weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, how many films have you seen where you're thinking, I've seen this actor actually been good, and here they look as if they just want to collect a paycheck and get over with as quickly as possible.
Yeah. It's a new house job.
Yep. Like, or even they need new curtains. Like kind of Grantham, the actor said he did Hellraiser 2 because he wanted new curtains.
Yeah. Michael Caine often says that he just wanted a holiday, so he just did the film.
Yeah.
Don't know how much his holidays cost, but
yeah. Well, I mean, look at some of his performance. He did show like he just showed up and didn't bother.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a Bruce Willis approach to acting. Is like sometimes I'll try, but sometimes I just won't.
Yeah. When's the last time Bruce Willis looked interested in a film?
Nah, now he's literally phoning it in nowadays. He's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna bother. But yeah, so is there anything else in TV we've missed?
Probably, but I can't really think of it.
Yeah, because it's like I just had a general idea of just going through from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and see what we said. But I think after like 2000s, we're both kind of stumped because we both kind of moved on to films.
Yeah,
really, and it was like, well, we didn't watch that much TV apart from an odd thing that jumped out as been good.
Yeah,
because that's when I started into film history. At that point, there's a lot of film history I want to watch from 2000 onwards.
I mean, to be honest, nowadays, anything on Netflix I watch is usually like a documentary. It's not really TV shows. And I do find when I try TV shows, if they don't like interest me within the first half of the first episode, I just don't bother because I've got too many films to watch. So they really do have to kind of hook me at an early point.
Yeah, because I mean, most BBC stuff I watch documentaries now. Most Netflix stuff are documentaries. I generally watch a lot of documentaries, and most fiction stuff, unless I'm really interested, I'm not going to bother. You do have to like get my interest. And usually the stuff I've watched, the 2 best things I've watched beyond Twin Peaks recently have been by Sion Sono, and they've been extended TV shows like The Great Vampire Hotel and Forest of Love. They both are great. Yeah. But there were a film or two are doing TV, but making it, shooting it like a film. So it's just an epic film.
Yeah.
Sort of like Twin Peaks.
I was going to say it's either going to be by a director you like, or maybe starring somebody you like. That's the way in. But otherwise, I don't really do too many, blind watches essentially on TV shows anymore.
Yeah, but that's the thing is even starring people like a lot of times like, well, the plot doing Crash. It has to be directorial, because you like actors and know that a lot of stuff to do is terrible. I'm just thinking, I'll wait till they do a good thing. But I mean, 2000s is definitely a case of that's when I started into film history a lot more, and like a lot of films I need to watch. I'm going to start watching them rather than watching an old TV show again.
Like, what was it? The Shadow Line on the BBC with Chiwetel Ejiofor and Stephen Ray and Christopher Eccleston. Again, that was good, but then it just got really silly. And sometimes you find that with TV, it kind of starts off well and then it just gets silly.
I've got that in Blu-ray, but I haven't watched it. I've watched the first little bit of it. It was good, but I was never motivated.
By the end, it just gets really silly. So it's almost as if they can't help themselves. It's just like, it's got a really good cast.
Yeah, you do find a lot of actors get kind of stranded in things where they go and do and hope the best and hope it works out, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there has been TV shows I've liked, like Watchmen, but it fell away at the end as well. It was very respectful to the source material, but some of the twists at the end, it was like, this doesn't work. This is not good.
Or sometimes you'll get a specific writer and a specific director for the pilot, but then
Yeah.
the rest of the show is completely different writers and completely different directors, and it just changes.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Loki recently. I watched some of the Marvel stuff, and the Loki's fun, but it's just fun. There's nothing neat to it, but it's almost like a cover of pulp covers throughout the show, and it's like, this is really enjoyable, and they've got good actors having fun with it. But it's not deep; it's just enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's like 6 episodes. So it's not really going to take that much time off you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got stuff like The Leftovers to watch, but I haven't got around to it yet. I heard it was good, but I just haven't got around to it. So it's like I'm treating like TV shows sort of like films, but they're longer, so might take me a bit longer to get to them. Where it's like, I hear it's good. I'll put it on the watch list and I'll get to it eventually, but I'm not going to like.
Yeah, I think that's the way it will be for me with TV shows as well. It'll be, if I hear it's good, I'll maybe check it out at some point, but I really don't spend any more time nowadays browsing TV shows, put it that way.
Yeah, because I watched the first season of Tremé and I enjoyed it. I need to watch more of them because I've got them. It's just I haven't been motivated yet to do it.
Yeah, I saw the first season and then never went back. But
it felt so self-contained the first season. Yeah. It's like, what can you do beyond this? So I need to watch more of it. I enjoyed Generation Kill, which was a limited TV show, like 6 episodes. Yeah. And that was good because it was well cast. It was about a specific book they were adapting. And those are the things that seem to work better, really.
Yeah.
It's like you've got an end planned and you can feel it. I think sometimes in stories you can feel something's been done.
Yeah.
And they're still going to keep padding it out.
Yeah, I mean, if something has a definitive end after season 1, but it ends up being more successful than they thought it was going to be, then they somehow always have to somehow get a season 2 out of this, instead of just going, you know what, that's it.
Yeah, I quite liked in the New Galactica, they stopped at season 4, and they could have been on longer. It was like, no, we're reaching the end. We can't pad this out. It's like, we have to end it. And I thought it was quite a good thing to do. It's like to say, yep, no matter what you think of the ending, they had an ending, they got to an ending, that's it. I wasn't particularly keen on the ending. I thought there was some good bits in it, but I thought it was a bit unsatisfying. Yeah. But I'm still glad they got their ending.
Yeah, know when to quit.
Yeah.
That's the same in TV or films.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing recently was Game of Thrones, which had an ending which everyone hated.
Yeah. Again, I've watched a few episodes of it, but I can't get past Sean Bean, so I've never been past. I've tried 2 or 3 times, but I know Sean Bean doesn't last that long, spoiler alert, but I've just never really bothered.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. The thing was, the complaint with the ending is like, I watched the entire. I always watched them in blocks every so often. Like, I'll get in the mood for Game of Thrones, I'd watch it a season or 2. Then I'd leave it for 2 years or 3 years, then I'd watch another section. So I was never like addicted to it or anything. It was just like, and it'd been out, it was always out in Blu-ray at that point, so I'd always get it cheap. Yeah. So.
Plus, my contrarian side is obviously, if everybody says something's amazing, it's like I'm immediately suspicious.
Yeah, no, but this one I just kind of enjoyed it, but there was a lot of flaws in every season. And it was like, well, when you go to the end and it's, it's flawed, it's like, well, every season was flawed. It's like, well, why are you complaining about? This one's a bit more flawed, and there's some stuff in there that was pretty trashy, but it's like the whole series like that. Ultimately, it's like it's enjoyable, but it wasn't amazing. I think a lot of people are deluding themselves. It was amazing when it really was. It never was. It was just like they put something in themselves and never quite got. Like all those people who named their daughters Khaleesi, and it was like they set it up so obvious that she's going to turn out to be a villain. It's a lot. It's not like seeing Star Wars and naming your child Darth Vader because you think maybe he might be.
Yes.
It's like it's so obvious she would be a villain. At some point, it was so many times throughout the whole seasons that she did things that were like, "Oh, that's dodgy." She's going to be done bad eventually. She did. What a shocker!
Yeah,
like the stupidity of some people is amazing.
Yeah, we know that.
Yes, I mean, there's shows like that people go mad on. And then also went mad on Westworld. And then he said, oh, it wasn't good after the first season. It was like, it was actually consistently the same level through 3 seasons. It was just like
still
first-
haven't seen it.
first season was a surprise to you, and I was like, well, I've already watched Westworld, the film. It's a good series. It's not amazing, but it's nice. It's a nice little story about AI and robotics and stuff. But it's not that emotionally engaging ever. But there's some nice things in it. But it was always like, well, you overdid your praise for it to start with, and now it can't keep up with your expectations of it. You're complaining.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, it was always a good, solid TV show. That was it. But no one likes good. They just like has to be amazing or it's garbage. It's like, nah.
Yeah. And nowadays, if it's good, that makes it amazing. And it's like, no, it's good. There's nothing wrong with making good.
Yeah. And sometimes if something's good, it's garbage because it's not as good as what you expected. So everything they do is terrible. But if one little flaw in it becomes the big sticking point, and it's like, wow. If it wasn't bad, watch Masters Universe, the new one. That's bad. It's genuinely bad.
Yeah, I've heard that's bad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Not really about He-Man, really.
Well, the He-Man thing wasn't that bad. It was the idea was it was just so badly written. It was the writing's terrible. The writing is just so terrible. It's like, wow. They managed to mess up He-Man. How could you? I mean, that's a low bar to reach.
Yes.
And you still couldn't even reach that low bar. But yeah, no. But yeah, I mean, I think most shows nowadays they're so hyped. It's become a big thing. It's like, what's the new Sopranos? What's the new Wire? And it's like, that's past. What's new Breaking Bad? That was a peak like 10, 15 years ago. And you shouldn't be expecting every show to be that now. You should be hoping they're good, but that's it. It's not.
Yeah, there's a reason landmark shows or films are landmarks because they don't happen that often.
I know. It's like, but because the hype machine, they have to make it look as if it's going to be amazing. It's like, no, this is just publicity. This is just advertising. You're falling for advertising. Congratulations, you're a moron.
But that's the thing. Certainly in Hollywood, the advertising and the publicity, there's more talent involved with that than actually making the films.
Yeah. It's,
so everything is a disappointment when after you see the trailers.
Well, Fast 9 was as stupid as I expected, so that was not disappointing that level.
Fair enough.
It delivered in stupidity. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but it delivered on what I expected.
Your expectations were met, so that's
yeah. They were exceeded by stupidity. But a lot of films just are like. But a lot of times you think they're going to be crap just before you even see them. Have you seen that Jungle Cruise trailer, the Rock one? And it looks terrible. They're now doing the publicity for it. And it's like, God, this just looks so bad. This is like.
Was it just a riff on African Queen, but with
that kind of thing? But it looked so terrible, and it was like, wow, this is like. Is no one get the guts to go out and say, look, this looks dumb. This looks embarrassing.
Or does nobody have the guts to come out and say when was The Rock actually in a decent film?
Yeah, I mean, nobody's got to see that. That's been, I think, for a while.
I like The Rock, but
he's choosing.
It hasn't been in a good film forever.
He succeeds in spite of his taste in films.
Yeah, because take Rampage. I thought Rampage would be big, daft fun, but it's absolutely boring as hell. It's like, how can you make that boring? It's like, at worst, that should just be like fun, and it's not even fun. It's like leaden. It's like, how is that possible?
I kind of enjoyed Rampage, but I know what you mean. No, it's not as daft.
It should be a lot. Yeah, it should have been a lot more fun than it actually was. And Skyscraper is just
awful. Why are we missing a TV show thing?
I don't know.
Well, we'll finish the TV show, but then we can run outside of this. I think we've wandered. I think we've actually done the TV show thing of going a season too far now.
Yes.
And we've
actually Fast and Furious that started it. It's your fault.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed this.
Yes, TV go and check out some of the shows that we mentioned that you perhaps haven't seen, and let us know in the comments some shows that we should watch.
Yeah. So SGS Arts, if you're watching this, watch the original Battlestar Galactica. You'll love it.
Right up your street.
Yeah, it's so you. Right. Well, hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.